So the past couple of weeks, I've been noticing YouTube recommending me Call of Duty Ghosts more often than it has before, and it's been making me think about the why. Why is Call of Duty Ghosts, a game that came out in 2013, like almost 13 years ago, getting such weird popularity? Now, sure, this has happened before with Call of Duty, rather older Call of Duty games that, might get a resurgence here and there and get popular all of a sudden because people are upset about the recent iteration in the franchise, which I don't blame them with Black Ops 7. But thinking about it, I've narrowed it down to two things, and it's really simple. The first one being, well, if you're here in the US, the recent capture of Maduro at the beginning of January, and how our president was able to not only get him, but with such quick and efficiency to where nobody even knew what was even going on, and how it was just an instant snap of a fingers, just like that. Now, I bring this up because in Call of Duty Ghosts, there is a mission called Federation Day that takes place on June 15th that is based in Venezuela. And the mission does start off with, some basic covert operations with the ghosts, though by the end of the mission it completely derails and the building falls apart and everything, which didn't happen in real life, but it got people talking. Specifically, I think this video by Draculis, I think they're called, started popping up in the feed, especially if you look at the comments, and how YouTube's algorithm was basically recommending this video, which I thought was just funny, because even I was recommended this video, and I was like, what the heck is going on? The YouTube algorithm is diabolical for recommending that. But I think that kind of started the discussion about COD Ghosts, because all it took was just this video in real life to kind of get the discussion back about this game and, what it brought to the Call of Duty formula. And then the second reason, jumping right off of that, is the old COD nostalgia hitting in with everybody. And a specific YouTuber, I hope I'm pronouncing this right, Metatrix, basically making some recent videos covering the subject and sort of keeping it alive and circulating as time has gone on the last, rest of this month. Now, there are other missions, I think, in COD Ghosts that, tackle being based in Venezuela, but, COD Ghosts' story is completely different to what actually happened. But, looking back at COD Ghosts and what it was, now as we take a trip down nostalgia memory lane, this game did a lot of things interestingly. And my experience with this game is I actually bought this game at release in 2013. I was still riding the COD hype train somewhat, but Battlefield 4 also came out at the same time. So Battlefield 4, for those of you who don't know, when it first came out, was a buggy, disgusting mess. Now, not as bad as 2042, mind you, but it was still bad at the time. And even me on PS4, at the time, I didn't have a gaming PC that could handle Battlefield 4, so I had to pick that. And at the time, even then, it was still issues galore. And so I eventually set it down and decided to go play Ghosts. And I played around with the multiplayer, obviously beat the campaign, and then got really into Extinction. And then I'd say after the first or second DLC for Battlefield 4, it really looked like the game was finally stable and enjoyable to play, so then I jumped back on there. And then Ghosts I visited every once in a while, but then eventually I kind of just stopped really playing it much until it came to PC, the COD clients rather, and I was able to play and have some fun with that over the years. But I never really sunk my teeth fully back into it until, I want to say recently even. I think some of the older videos I did on this channel last year, I might have dipped into it here and there, but for the most part, I didn't really put as many recent game time into it this last month. And that I guess kind of sums up my experience with COD Ghosts, is that it just was one of those games that I never really got too attached to it, but there was potential there. And I think people are starting to feel like they were maybe a bit too harsh on it, and, maybe we judged it too terribly. And I guess that begs the question, were we too harsh on it? Did COD Ghosts really deserve the hate it got? Personally, and I'm going to be honest, yes and no. This is my personal opinion, I will disclose. But I'll start off with the campaign. To my memory, I haven't played through it recently, but honestly, I don't know if there's really any reason to revisit it, because it's really the ending that I think sours the game for me the most, because the ending of this game is you take down the big bad guy underwater on a sinking train, and you fire a 44 Magnum round into his chest. Now, a 44 Magnum round is very powerful. In fact, in the movie Dirty Harry with Clint Eastwood back in the day, He described it as the most powerful handgun in the world, because at the time it was. Until the 500 Smith & Wesson came along, and I think there might be another revolver at this point replacing that. But regardless, it's a powerful round. You fire this thing, the shockwave of the bullet hitting your chest alone is going to rupture your internal organs. There are plenty of videos on YouTube you can see, and I've even fired a 44 Magnum myself. It kicks like a mule, and it hits hard. This guy ain't surviving it. Rourke ain't surviving that shot. And the fact that he lives, and there's a cliffhanger of him taking Logan away, has always been stupid, even as a kid. I'm like, you can't survive that to a chest no matter how you're built. Like, it was so dumb. And there were a lot of little moments in the campaign I remember that didn't really grab me as hard as I think it should have. And there were kind of some weird plot holes. It didn't feel like the campaign was completely fleshed out that it could have been. And I just felt like it was just your average run-of-the-mill COD campaign experience, or at least started that. So I never really felt compelled to see a sequel, because it just didn't make sense to make a sequel. Because it was stupid how they cliffhanged us. And in the end, we still didn't get a sequel to it, because they ended up scrapping Ghosts 2. So, multiplayer, on the other hand, having a much more experienced perspective, given the amount of FPS games I've played since Ghosts release, as well as later Call of Duties, there's a lot of good ideas here. I'm going to be honest. The create a soldier system in this game, where you can mix and match all these different perks, instead of them being locked to, perk 1, perk 2, perk 3, and being locked in that sort of bracket, you can now pick any perk to your heart's content and combination, as long as you adhere to the points. So that was a really good idea, and I wish it came back on some level. Well, I think it kind of did in a later COD. I can't remember it right now as I'm recording, but for the most part, that's what made this game unique, at least, was that you could pick and choose what you wanted to do with that. But the other side of the coin when it comes to COD Ghosts multiplayer was the maps were too big sometimes. Now, sure, if I'm going to be honest, I've been playing Ground War in Ghosts, and I think having the higher player count, especially on these bigger maps, really helps, especially Stonehaven. Stonehaven, I think, is a much better map when you have max players on both sides. Easily much better. There is also still to this day, and I even remember on PS4, a performance issue where the game will randomly just spike and drop frames and then bounce back. The one PC I've noticed, even streaming it recently, it lags terribly. Just randomly. I don't know why, and it does this for multiplayer and Extinction. Nobody knows why. I've looked around. It looks like it could be like a sound issue of some kind. I don't know. They never fixed it, and it's still here. I don't know why, but it's still here. And I do feel like some of the balancing could have maybe been done, because the game did kind of have a camping problem, I remember back in the day. And not all the kill streaks were kind of cool. Some of them kind of sucked. Like, the Trinity rocket I really don't like, because it just feels weird to operate and use compared to a cruise missile. And then there's Extinction, which I think is the highlight of this game. And I wish Extinction came back. It hasn't been back really since. No, the Infinite Warfare Zombies one doesn't count from Beast from Beyond. That... I don't even want to get there with that. That doesn't count. It's not officially back that way. But actually, the mode itself. Because really, this is the first time they actually did a different mode that wasn't zombies in a hot minute, really. Or just in general, this is the first time they did a spin-off of that. But then ultimately, they just went back to doing zombies, and then that was that, which was a shame. Because I think Extinction had everything there for it, and was, I think, a great idea and concept, and it just needed a little bit more meat and balancing to it. I mean, I'm going to start off with the big one. The teeth system was cool, but some of the requirements to get some of the unlocks was ridiculous. Like 1,000 teeth just to get double classes is just dumb. Why is it that much teeth? And you don't even earn that much teeth. Like, it would take you hours upon hours of grinding just to get to that point. And it stinks. It really stinks. And I wish they had either cut the requirements in half or increased the amount of teeth you could earn easily, but they never really did. And honestly, there's only like, the 4 or 5 maps, and I don't know, it just felt like I wish there was a little bit more they could have done to flesh this out and given like more alternate modes or something, but this is what we did end up getting ultimately. And I guess the last sort of thing I have against COD Ghosts really was the color was a lot washed out. I am running this game with a reshade, and it makes those colors pop out so much better. I don't know why they went out with this washed out color look. It was just bad. Like, I understand the aesthetic maybe, but honestly, they should have just added some more color to this. Like, it just didn't work. I mean, it was a nice experiment, but it just didn't work. But honestly, re-answering the question, were we too harsh on COD Ghosts? Again, still yes and no, but maybe a little bit, because the harshness the community had responded to this game, I think, did ultimately hurt the development and even some of the fixes and changes that could have been into this game. And in the end, a lot of people really started jumping off the Ghost bandwagon. And, you know, this was the time where we just ended the golden age of Call of Duty with Black Ops 2. So a lot of people were like, as we were going into the next generation, is this the best that they got? And a lot of people were starting to feel like they were rehashing and redoing similar things. I mean, even down to, like, assets. They still took assets from Modern Warfare 2 and 3, which I don't think is necessarily inherently a bad thing, considering developers do it all the time. But still, I think a lot of people were just kind of discouraged, even myself, that, like, we were starting to get into this repetitive formula, and that maybe it was time to take a break, you know, for a year. Spoiler alert, that still hasn't happened, and I don't know why it still hasn't happened, but you know what? Maybe Black Ops 7, how much of a shit show that's been, maybe something will wake up in Activision. Or it won't, and we'll just still be getting yearly releases and keep bashing on these newer Call of Duties in an endless cycle, literally the definition of insanity on full display.
Did I ever tell you the definition of insanity?
So, I definitely think it's worth coming back to it, at least giving it a try, seeing if you like it. And if you guys have any other positive thoughts you have about COD Ghosts, leave it in the comments down below, because I could honestly make an entire video reviewing this game and everything. And if it's something you'd like to see, you know, again, let me know down below. But I think that's all I really have to say about COD Ghosts. Just a game that I had a little bit of experience with and enjoyed it for what it was, but I feel like there should have been a lot more meat there and done a lot more with it. But honestly, a lot of what-ifs. So that's all I have to really say in this video. If you enjoyed what I had to say, then please feel free to like, comment, subscribe, hit that notification bell to know when I post another video. It really lets me know that you guys love what I put out there and helps let me know that people like to hear what I have to say. I also live stream on Twitch and YouTube Thursdays and Saturdays. Thursdays at around 7:30 p.m. Central Standard Time, 6 p.m. Central Standard Time on Saturdays. The Thursday one depends on how editing a video goes for the week. I also have a backup on Rumble just in case something might happen on YouTube, or just to have a backup in general, because you never know. So anyway, take care, and I'll see you guys next week with another video.